The brazen bull, worst punishment in the history of mankind. Okay.
To our macabre series of shows featuring some of the worst things people have done to each other in the name of punishment. While in other shows we've talked about instruments of torture and killing that could be said to be basic. Claws that rip flesh, cudgels that smash bones. This particular instrument of horrifyingly inhumane torture could be said to have been cooked up by creative folks. As with just about anything we've talked about in this series, it would be unimaginable to suffer this treatment, but hey.
This is a series? Hey, Chad, this might be a fire series for us to watch, bro. Worst punishments in history? Oh my god, the brazen bull. What the fuck? Oh, hey, Chad, if this is fire, we might have to watch some more. Hold on.
Hey, we aren't going to say it's any worse than having your intestines chewed on by starving rats. Like that punishment though, this one was slow, making hanging or head chopping seem very merciful in comparison. This form of execution was created by the ancient Greeks. It had a few names, and it might also be called the Bronze Bull or the Sicilian Bull. But how do we know anything about it at all? One of the answers is because it was written about in something called the Bibliotheca Historica, which translates as historical library. It consists of many books written by an ancient Greek historian named Diodorus Siculus. In these books, you'll find his version of the history of the world. From what went down in ancient Egypt to the leader Alexander the Great. Quite a lot of it is still intact, but some parts in the series are missing or in fragments. In one of these books, Mr. Siculus wrote about the brazen bull, and this is what he said. The guy who invented it was an inventor by trade, and he was named Perilos of Athens. It's said before he built this thing,
Yo, Souls, you not tapped into the torture methods? No. My bad, I don't know ball about the torture methods. Okay? Yo, Buck, that's what I'm saying. Are you? What the fuck? My bad, I'm not tapped in.
Somewhere between 570 and 554 BC, he actually pitched the idea. He was what you might call a creative technologist of the past, looking for some funding. He got that funding from a man named Phalaris, the tyrant of Acragas. Given his frightening title, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that this man was said to be very cruel. In some accounts of his life, it's written that he enjoyed torture and even went so low as to eat children. We should say that Encyclopedia Britannica cites research that says he wasn't as cruel as some people have written. Whatever the case, it seems he commissioned the building of the brazen bull. So how did one perish in a brazen bull?
Okay.
Well, it was certainly a thing conjured up by a creative yet sadistic imagination. It was said to be the same size of a bull, but shaped from bronze, with an opening where a man could enter the thing. A fire was then lit under the bull, and the man would slowly roast to death.
Yo!
But get this, it was made so that when the man was howling in agony, his shrieks would emanate through specially distorted pipes built into the bull, so the impression an onlooker would get was an animal bellowing in pain. This might have been the fun part for someone like the tyrant of Acragas. The smoke would come out through the holes in the bull's nose, and that nose was filled with incense, since burning bodies don't smell so good. The bones that were left would then be turned into bracelets, so the story goes. When the idea was pitched by Perilos, he said this to the tyrant Phalaris. The occupant will shriek and roar in unremitting agony, and his cries will come to you through the pipes as the tenderest, most pathetic, most melodious of bellowings. Your victim will be punished, and you will enjoy the music.
Oh my god, bro. Listen, another example of the best timeline is your timeline. A lot of y'all want to complain about this goddamn economy, but you don't have to worry about shit like this. Okay? I'd rather pay $2,000 a month in rent for a one-bedroom apartment than deal with this shit right here, bro. What kind of fuck shit is this?
The bull was finished, Phalaris told the inventor to get inside the thing to test out the sound, but some sources say he lit the fire and the inventor died there. Others say he pulled him out, but then killed him by pushing him over a cliff. It seems for all his hard work, Perilos was killed, but perhaps not because Phalaris didn't want to pay. Even though Phalaris is said to have been keen on cruelty, it's written that he said this to Perilos after hearing about the execution method. His words revolted me. I loathed the thought of such ingenious cruelty and resolved to punish the artificer in kind. I said to him, if your art can really produce this effect, get inside yourself and pretend to roar, and we'll see whether the pipes will make such music as you describe. By the way, it's written that upon his downfall, Phalaris was also killed inside the bull. So that's inventor and commissioner both killed at their own hands in a way. Word of the brazen bull was passed down and histories were written, and they linked the device with these two men, the inventor and the tyrant. But the history of the bull doesn't stop there. The Romans, it said, had a taste for the brazen bull, and if you've watched our other shows on Roman torture, you won't be surprised to hear that some people wouldn't have had many scruples about roasting a man to death and enjoying his screams. We might look at the story of a man named Saint Eustace. It's said he became a martyr after being killed in the 2nd century. The Romans were punishing many Christians before they themselves converted to Christianity under the Emperor Constantine. But that was in the...
Damn, that's kind of fucked. Jesus Christ. Literally. Oh my God, that's... Yeah, just torture a bunch of Christians for you to turn a Christian yourself. What the fuck why was I killed for then? What?
4th century AD, before a lot of Christian blood was spilled, and it seems a few Christians also got cooked to death inside a bronze animal. St. Eustace was said to have been one of them. Before he converted to Christianity, he had served under a Roman emperor, but he saw the light, so to speak, when he had a vision one day, which involved a stag and a crucifix. Christians might tell you that this man then lost everything, which was one of those tests of God. He lost his cash, his servants, and his wife and kids were taken away from him by, of all things, a lion and a wolf. Yet his faith remained strong throughout. There are a few different stories as to what happened to this man, but some people will tell you he got his wealth back as well as his family, but in the end, he, his wife, and children were all roasted to death in the brazen bull on the orders of Emperor Hadrian. We looked at some Christian sources and they seem to back that up, although they don't say his family got the treatment too. We also found this piece of Christian history written in the 1800s. It seems to suggest that when Eustace and his family got roasted, they died, but some miracles did happen. This is from that text, The Holy Martyrs by Divine...
Damn. Talk about getting cooked. That was bad. That was bad. All right, let's watch another one, man.
Back by popular demand, we bring you another show on unimaginable punishments authorities have meted out on criminals and people deemed a threat to government, rulership, or even religion. While crushing people's heads in medieval vices certainly
There's
doesn't
like a
happen
compilation
anymore,
chat.
the world is still home to some barbaric punishments today. Even in the most developed countries, you have things such as waterboarding or the brain wreck of being imprisoned in isolation. Caning, which still happens in some countries, has been called
No Diddy. What is this? What is going on?
beyond excruciating, while being stoned to death, we can imagine, must be an awful way to go. In 2008, reports emerged about a 13-year-old Somalian girl that had been buried up to her neck and stoned to death by 50 men.
Oh
Her
my
crime?
God!
Reporting a rape. Today we'll explore more insane meanness in this episode of the Infographic Show, Worst Punishments in the History of Mankind, Part 2. Number 10, the Brazen Bull. Also known as the Sicilian
we already
Bull,
know about
this
this.
brutal
We already
punishment
know
was
about this,
around
chat.
in ancient
And
Greece.
we know about
How do we
chat.
know? The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus wrote about it in one of his many history books that covered various cultures of the time. He writes that a bull would be fashioned out of bronze to almost the same size as a real bull. There was a door in the side of the thing through which people who were given the death penalty would be shoved. A fire was then lit under the bull and the person was roasted to death. It's even said that the bull was designed in a way so that the screams would be emitted to onlookers. If this sounds bad, well, by the end of the show, you might be thinking it wasn't such a bad way to die after all. Number 9, Iron Maiden. You might have already heard of the name if you're into heavy metal music. The band got their name from a torture device. Like many contraptions of torture, historians dispute when and how it was used, but you can certainly find Iron Maidens in museums today. It's thought that the first event was a 14th century Germanic invention, but throughout the following centuries, many historians would write about these devilish things. They kinda look like an Egyptian mummy, but the inside of the door is festooned with spikes. When it's closed, the person in the casket is impaled. As we said, some historians write that these things may not have been used or used often, but they certainly existed. Others write that they were talked about a lot in the 18th and 19th centuries to show how barbaric people used to be and how much better they were in their era. Number 8, Crucifixion. We probably should have included this in the first show, as it is a terrible way to die. As you'll know from reading Christian history, crucifixion involved tying or nailing a naked person to a wooden beam. The person would then be left to die slowly. That's how Jesus Christ ended up. What you might not know is that there were many ways to crucify a person. Perhaps a good scenario was being nailed.
Bro, that's such a crazy concept, though. Like, I understand it's like a tale as old as time now, like that story. But, bro, imagine just being hung up to a fucking wooden board to be left to die. Oh my God, bro. That's horrible. Holy shit.
nailed to a tree, but much worse was being impaled on a spike and left to die. Even in ancient history, some people thought this was too much, with Roman philosopher Cicero calling it a most cruel and disgusting punishment. If you didn't die of shock or sepsis or dehydration, then the animals around might feast on you. You might also not know that it wasn't just popular in ancient times. The Japanese crucified people in the 16th century, the Burmese in the 19th century, and in some parts of the Middle East, crucifixion is still a legal punishment. Number 7, Spanish donkey. This is a donkey no man or woman would ever want to ride. If you saw our first show, the way someone would be tortured is similar to that of the Judas cradle. Prisoners would be sat on what looks like a triangle.
Oh, that's the device. Oh, I didn't even know what I was looking at. Oh, hold on. Let me move my cam down here too. Move y'all down here.
Shaped block of wood. This wood might have nails on the ridge. They would be lowered down onto the sharpened ridge and sometimes pulled down by weights, which would cause excruciating pain. Some sources say this could result in the person being cut apart and dying. Others say it just crippled a person. The French called it the chevalet, or horse. A History Channel documentary says such a device was used during the American Civil War to torture Confederate prisoners. These prisoners would pass.
I know this from porn. What are you watching? Yo, I'm not gonna lie, bro. After we did that Google form sheet, I don't trust any of y'all, bro. For real, I don't trust any of y'all, bro. God. Freak ass.
Pass out from pain, and sometimes be disabled for life. Number 6, breast ripper. These awful things look like two pronged forks, similar to the fangs of a snake, except they were made from iron. Featured in the book Victims and Values, A History and a Theory of Suffering, it said they would be heated up and then used to rip off a woman's breasts as a punishment.
Yo, what the fuck? What's wrong with people?
Would cause severe scarring and the loss of breasts, but the infection that ensued would often kill the woman. The website Medieval Times and Castles writes, this instrument was mostly reserved for women accused of conducting a miscarriage or those accused of adultery. There are some reports that ISIS used a similar instrument on a female victim in 2014, except they called it the biter. The biter was used, according to reports, because some women were accused of not wearing the correct dress. Number 5, crocodile shears. Men, of course, did not escape such barbaric punishments.
Not the meat cutter 9000. No!
Related to their manhood. Crocodile shears were iron tubes with teeth on the inside. They would be heated up and clamped on a man's penis as if it was the mouth of a crocodile. This would result in castration, but again, in those days, such a punishment often meant a slow death from infection. Medieval Times and Castles writes, the crocodile shears had a very specific purpose, to mutilate those who attempted to assassinate the king. One other writer tells us, after ripping off the penis, they would rip off other things like your fingers or toes. Attempting to, or actually killing a king, regicide, was considered the worst of the worst, and so of course it warranted a punishment which would prevent any man from ever trying it again. It could have been worse. You could have gotten the iron comb. This was a heavy comb with sharp spikes run over the flesh until there wasn't much of you left. People often got combed, and then if that didn't finish them, they lost their heads. Number 4, the Chinese torture chair. Okay, so this is another piece of horror apparatus that may have been used only to scare the living daylights out of a populace. Jigsaw, from the Saw franchise, would have been envious of this chair, had he been real, of course. We actually found one of them on a museum website with the present owner listed. So, they did exist. The chair is made from wood, with 12 steel blades in the arm, back and footrests, and seat. It's said in Europe a chair was used, although we refer to that simply as the iron chair. This might have had 500 to 1500 spikes for the victims to sit on. Sometimes hot coals would be placed under the chair for added pain. One historian writes, the spikes did not penetrate vital organs, and blood loss was minimized, at least until the person was released from the chair. We can't imagine the outcome was good once the prisoner was released. Number 3, Chinese water torture. You might be thinking, what is this doing here among instruments that cause extreme physical pain? Well, perhaps being sent crazy, slowly, might be even worse than losing a body part or two. The torture consists of slowly dripping water on one part of the head, and apparently, after enough time, this will become absolutely unbearable, making the victim mad. Mythbusters tried it out to see if it indeed works, and the person didn't last long at all. After not even 2 hours, he asked the experiment to stop, complaining of claustrophobia and shoulder spasms, and
Y'all think that's real, bruh? Just dropping water droplets on your head? I just moved my head. Type shit.
saying he was starting to crack up. Imagine days of this. Skeptics are not sure it would be so effective. There's only one way to find out. Number 2, coffin torture. The problem with this is the fact that it took you ages to die. It was very popular in the Middle Ages and used to scare people away from committing crimes. Victims would be hung up from a beam or tree inside a kind of coffin, a wooden prison with holes in it. It would be so small that the person was bent into a painful position. They were then just left there. People might throw stuff at them, prod them with sticks, etc., and they would stay there until they slowly died. Even after death, they were left there until—
I'm not gonna lie, that might be the worst one, bro. That might be the worst one. Literally just being in, like, imagine going to Walmart and there's just a human, like, hanging from the ceiling, bro. They shot the Al-Azhar for the 2 months. But, like, yeah, just imagine going to the mall, right? And you're at the food court and there's just someone hanging from the ceiling, just in prison, like, crumpled up into a box, and, like, you can't do anything because obviously you can't let that person go. Nah, that's crazy.
the birds had picked apart their flesh and there wasn't much of them left. The lucky ones were allowed down alive if their crime wasn't so bad, perhaps. And finally, number 1, Scaphism. One of the more creative tortures that has ever existed, this Persian method of execution is like no other. According to the book One Bloody Thing After Another, the world's gruesome history, the victim was forced to eat a large amount of milk and honey, so much he would throw up, attracting ants and vermin. He was also covered in honey. Apparently, most of this honey would be smeared around the eyes, nose, mouth, and genitals, and also in the ears and the anus.
No way.
He would then be tied between 2 boats in a stagnant piece of shallow water, where he would be feasted on by all manner of insects and four-legged scavengers.
Nah.
One Byzantine historian wrote, "Moreover, his belly, distended as it is with milk and honey, throws off liquid excrements, and these putrefying breed swarms of worms, intestinal and of all sorts. Thus, the victim lying in the boats, his flesh rotting away in his own filth and devoured by worms, dies a lingering and horrible death. He is basically eaten from the inside out, or he might be lucky to die sooner than that." One of the most cruel punishments we didn't include in this—
Bro, my worst fear is being covered by any sort of bug, bro. Just any sort of bug in mass covering me sounds disgusting.
This list is forcing someone to browse through the thousands of terribly designed websites online.
Alright, bro. Here you go. That's what I'm saying, bro. How do humans even think of shit like this, bro? What goes into your mind that makes you think of this shit? Like, you had to have been doing drugs or some shit, bro. No way.